Um, so today we're talking about a couple of different things in regards to AI, but the main thing that I think is important to keep in focus will be the advantages and disadvantages of artificial intelligence and AI. Where can it be used? Where might it be potentially harmful? And what kind of innovations and other technological uses can we expect from it? And another question that I think is also really important is how integrated AI is already into your regular life. Where do you see it being used? Where do you see that it might be used in the future? Where do you think it might have been used in the past, and other things? So I also have a couple of presentation slides that I wanted to share. They shouldn't take too long, but we will be shortly showing you those. I didn't find it. There we are. And there we go. All right. So to start, I want to talk about what artificial intelligence is, right? And what I think the easiest thing to do first is to tell you exactly what artificial intelligence is not. So you may have seen movies like I, Robot, 2001: A Space Odyssey. You may have seen movies where computers rise up to take over the world, right? And things like that are what are theoretically called general AI. And general AI is the idea that a computer has the ability to learn on the fly, on the go, and integrate new information in a way that humans can do. Most artificial intelligence models, and we do call them models, don't actually do that. They operate based on information and data that people give them. So humans will usually train artificial intelligence models, right? So to know what that looks like and to think about it in an interesting way, I think, is to think about machine learning and AI modeling. Machine learning is, as you might see on the presentation there, a development of computer systems that can learn and adapt without following explicit instructions by using statistical models. You can't get AI models without machine learning is basically the point, right? So there is no way that a computer might be able to take over the world because it needs information from humans and other sources in order to do that. AI modeling is taking machine learning and using it to construct these things that we're talking about, to kind of imitate human decision making by giving them many different pieces of information by which to make decisions. Moving on, what you usually see are large language models. These are things like ChatGPT, Bard, or even the Snapchat artificial intelligence piece, if you use that or seen that at all. It basically can recognize, summarize, translate, and do a whole bunch of other things with any sort of language. It can generate text, it can organize text, in other contexts, in other contexts using data sets that it's given. They're definitely the most successful form of artificial intelligence, and they're probably what you see in the most popular forms of media. So there are some risks, and that's why I wanted to talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of AI. Things like discrimination and hate speech, information hazards, or misinformation and disinformation. These are all things that can come as a part of human error, and they can get filtered into the AI either intentionally or unintentionally. Most of the time it's unintentional. As you may know or use or have seen, ChatGPT has a disclaimer when you open it and when you use it that describes the fact that your information and your language models that you've been inputting to the chat will be used to formulate more language models for the AI model in the future. Model cards are an interesting tool for using this. I won't get too much into that. Generation for text completions is a technical term used to show the model description. And OpenAI, which is the company that creates ChatGPT and monitors it, has some very interesting thoughts on this project. These are the people that are generally considered to be the progenitors or the forerunners or even just the most influential people within the artificial intelligence sector, not including people like Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or other multi-billionaires who are funding resource projects of their own, right? But as you notice, there are things that people would say are advantages and some people would say are disadvantages, and coming to those conclusions is going to end up being our job and your job ultimately as well, right? And I think that might be it for me, but I think also what's important will be learning how to use this in your ArcGIS models as well. They're powerful tools. AI is a powerful tool, and it can be used for many different things. I think I'll swing it over to Anila, and I will relinquish the talking stick for a second.
Great, thank you, Tim. Should I maybe share my screen right now? I'm going to go over some links, so I will share the rest of this PowerPoint. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Good. Okay, great. So just to reiterate a little bit about how AI works, because it's basically the same whether it's a generative AI, as Tim mentioned, in social media, or if it's in an ArcGIS or regular GIS thing. So how does it actually work? It's really important to know that AI needs humans to work effectively. As Tim mentioned, you have to input training data. That's the same for, as I mentioned, like the social media, generative AI things, and GIS AI. Then the AI system will analyze the data set for correlations and patterns, and then it'll use those patterns to make predictions or generate new content. And it's really important to know that it's also a very iterative process. It's not like you just give it training data and then it just makes a thing. You sort of have to validate that the predictions and what they're making are actually working. And if it's not working the way that you want it to, you have to adjust the training data and go through the whole process again. So AI is definitely needs humans, and I know that it can be scary, but it really depends on how we use it and we train it. So there are a few use cases in GIS. The first that I can think of that's really simple to know is you give an AI a satellite image. So this is a satellite image of a street with some buildings. And then you say, this outline here is a building, this outline here is a building, this outline here is a building. From that training data, can you outline the rest of the buildings in this image? So that is a pretty binary case of this is a building or this is not. And that's a pretty widely used application of AI in GIS and satellite imagery analysis. We can take that a step further and say that this part of an image, for example, is bare land, or this part of an image is a river or a stream, it's water. So you can give an AI sort of that training data of like, I know that these places in this image are this specific land cover. Can you predict the land cover across the whole image or other images like that? And this can get a little bit complicated just because of how differently different places in the world look on satellite imagery. And so if a model works really well with a specific set of training data for one area of the world, it might not work well globally or in another part of the world. And that's just to reiterate that it really is such an iterative process, and you really need human eyes on all of the training data and all of the outputs that you get. There are some other use cases that you can use AI for. The first is to clean data sets. So a lot of the times in my work, I work with a lot of global data, and country names are not spelled the same across all of these data sets. And so you can say, these are the data sets where I know this is this country. Can you make sure that the data set has the country name normalized in all of the other data sets that I want to use? Another way to use AI in GIS is to detect changes and identify anomalies. So for example, using this land cover image, if you have one image from one year and another image from 10 years later, you can sort of predict where things have changed across that image over time. And you can also predict future scenarios. So if you can say that this sort of soil moisture had created this sort of crop yield, can you predict the future soil moisture and crop yield for future seasons? And we have actually published a couple of story maps using AI for their analyses. I'm going to share those really quickly. So ChatGPT for the SDGs, we worked with Pavel Bordiag from Carbon Terra, who built a tool using ChatGPT to track water stress. And we'll send these links out so that everyone can read these story maps later on in your own time. It has an introduction to ChatGPT and sort of how we can use it for the SDGs. Let's see. So he even gave screenshots of the step-by-step questions that he asked it. So for the first one, can you please give me a list of satellite-based algorithms that can be used to measure crop water stress, and give me a description of each one in a table. So he was able to get information from all of these different algorithms that calculate different things in satellite imagery. And he could then ask for the pros and cons of each algorithm and then decide which one he wanted to use. So another thing that's pretty great is that you can ask it to write Python code. So if you don't know any programming, but you want to be able to use that in your analysis, you can ask ChatGPT to write a Python code that can do the following steps that you laid out. And then he goes through all of the things, and then it's actually really great because he shows an error that he gets from ChatGPT and how he fixed it. So as I mentioned, it's a pretty iterative process. If it's not giving you the results that you want, you have to sort of go back and fix it and figure out what works for you. So this was the final result of this analysis. You can see that the more blue areas have higher water content in the soil, and the lower soil content are the ones in yellow. And this is from 2018 to 2020 after a drought. So that was one application. Another one that we just published recently is using AI and machine learning to map disaster relief in Turkey during the earthquake in February 2023. So this group of people collected a data set of 94 million tweets and 3.6 million images from Twitter. And they analyzed it using AI and machine learning to sort of figure out where the damage is. And then using that, they were able to figure out where they needed to send their resources for disaster response. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And it's always interesting to hear use cases like this, because in the media with generative AI and things like that, it is, as I said, it can be pretty scary, but it can also be very useful in a lot of contexts. So now we're going to go into our group discussion. I will hand it back over to Tim. We have about 25 people, so we had thought about maybe doing a whole group discussion, but we can do breakout rooms, whatever you feel fit, Tim.
Yeah, I had a couple different ideas. So I think the big group discussion might be best. And I would ask that everyone, to the best of their ability, would come off mute and answer some of these questions. But I wanted to think about the 2 food for thought questions at the beginning of the session, and then 2 other questions that I would have used in the breakout groups. So again, what are the advantages and disadvantages? And I'll share these questions again, right? So what are the advantages and disadvantages of AI? How have you consciously integrated or unconsciously integrated AI into your life? Have you done that for any reason? Have you not? Why or why not? And then for your other two questions, it's a personal question, a personal opinion question. What are the opinions on artificial intelligence? What are your opinions on artificial intelligence? Should we use it? Should we not? Is it good? Is it bad? What are your thoughts? And then how can we use artificial intelligence for climate action? We saw two examples that Anela just brought up about tracking water and tracking other natural resources. I've seen examples of artificial intelligence being used to sift through the data for farming so they can farm based on the highest yield crops, based on the healthiest crop, so that they can even track genomes so that when they're genetically modifying certain organisms that withstand diseases or be anti-bug, they will use data from those research and then input it into an AI model and have it organize things for them. So there are many different applications. So I'd like to hear if you had any thoughts about how artificial intelligence could be used, or if you thought about it at all. So I'll open the floor for questions. And yeah, let's hear you. Has anybody used any artificial intelligence via their social media at all? Has anybody used artificial intelligence via school?
I don't really use AI that much, but so many people keep on saying to use it since it's going to be more oftenly used in future generations. Um, some platforms like ChatGPT, I tried it, but I honestly don't use it that much.
And if you don't mind, Bernice, do you think that artificial intelligence seems like a good thing the way people are asking you to use it? Does it seem like something that could be useful? How do those conversations form your opinion on artificial intelligence?
So I feel like it can be useful. It can give you ideas, but I feel like you need to use it in a good way where you're not losing your own creativity, but you're asking chat or AI for tools or for suggestions. And I feel like we can use it, but not all the time. And just to make sure we have a little like human in us left. But that's what I feel about this artificial intelligence situation.
Sure, thank you. Savita, I see your hands up. You can either.
Oh, actually, so I'm starting a project with AI that I'm gonna be doing in like late August to like maybe like October or November. And basically I'm competing in an app challenge and I'm using AI to control food waste. So I think it can be used very effectively if we use it towards the good things. And I honestly don't think that it can be that bad. And I think it'll just be used for good in the future.
Awesome. It's a really cool project. That's a very interesting use of artificial intelligence. Another thing that I've read and seen for artificial intelligence. Oh, go ahead, Andri. Sorry.
Oh, you can continue. It's okay.
So the other thing that I'll come back to you right after. The other interesting thing about artificial intelligence is the issue of money. So the more powerful an artificial intelligence tool becomes, the more expensive it becomes to run, the more expensive it becomes to purchase and use, right? So when I think about the usage of artificial intelligence tools, I worry that some people who have access to these things will be easily able to enter this new wave of technology, and then some people may not be able to enter it as frequently or as regularly. So I'm interested to hear anyone's thoughts on that as well. But Anvi, you had a thing, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I think like also for AI, once you get really like accommodated to it, like Bernice said, your lifestyle kind of changes. So you start relying on like simple things through AI instead of like, it can be used for like good things, definitely. Like like farming, water, like maybe like a map, like mapping where resources are lacking due to war, like stuff like that. But at the same, like it is definitely advancing the world, but at the same time, it's taking parts of like humans and kind of making, like, if you were to go back maybe 100 years to 200 years, our lifestyles were very different since we didn't have like as much technology. And like AI definitely makes our lifestyles different, but it makes it more convenient and easier in ways at the same time.
Very interesting. Senna, your hand's raised.
Just adding on to what Omri said, I think like I really fear us sort of turning into sheep and becoming like overly reliant on like the information that AI is providing us, because I guess one scenario I imagine is like some sort of like totalitarian government like using AI like in order to push their own agendas. What could happen if, you know, some oppressive government like takes control of like LLMs like ChatGPT and then like start presenting like falsities as truth, and humans really being so reliant on AI that we like lose our critical thinking skills almost, and are sort of unable to distinguish between what's true and what's false.
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's a delicate balance between the real and good benefit that Suvid pointed out about how AI can map water waste, food waste, resource waste, how it can map access and give us access to information that would be really useful in our policies. But at the same time, as you mentioned, yes, there are certain aspects of our lives that will become really automatic, and we might lose our ability, or we might not see the value in keeping our ability to either critically think or to use our own brains in these regards. Mohammed, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for all the efforts that you're doing and all the knowledge that we got. But for the AI, I think it's a little bit like a help for the people, because it gives you some ideas. You cannot rely on it. You have to even review what you got. The outcome comes out of the your question to it. It's not that well trained to give you something, but at least could give you a start. If you're writing about something, if you're looking for more ideas, if you're trying to have a discussion, sometimes if you would make a discussion with the AI tool, it could give you something or get you to somewhere where you could have your own genuine idea. I believe that this is what happened. You just, as if you're having a conversation or brainstorming with your team anywhere, your students in the school, your teammates, if you anywhere, you could get a project idea or something. That's what I think, but you cannot rely on it 100%. And I believe there's still a long time to be developed till you can rely on it. To be honest, I didn't try the expensive ones. I believe that would be much more better, but I believe that I don't even need it. All what I need is a brainstorm, no more. So I believe it's critical and it's needed, but we have to make sure that people who work with it don't use it to the 100% limit, and just use more ideas or a brainstorm, no more. And we have to make sure that students in universities or schools are doing the same, and even governments. I hope they can know that it's just like brainstorming, no more.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And in my previous presentation, I will try and share now. The European Commission has, here it is. So if the EU has been somewhat at the forefront of AI regulation and AI control, especially in regard to their data privacy and data protection acts. But these are some quotes from the European Commission's harmonized rules on artificial intelligence. It is in the Union interest to preserve technological leadership and secure values, fundamental rights, and principles. Recent conclusions from 2020 address the complexity and bias of certain AI tools as well, and unpredictability, as you mentioned as well. Some of these things aren't necessarily predictable. You can't always tell exactly what you're going to get from a certain AI tool. So when we think about artificial intelligence in the popular sense, it's often in a non-legal or in a non-political way. We use it maybe in our work, we use it maybe in our social media, but as I think Senna mentioned, there are instances or worries that certain legal authorities or just authoritative governments, as you mentioned, might be able to use these things. I mean, we see artificial intelligence in advertising as well, right? So from both the public sector and the private sector. There are some organizations, some civil society organizations, nonprofits and the like, that would also like to see artificial intelligence and that protects fundamental rights. So these were some of the, these were 9 points that were brought up by a civil society organization called Access Now that was trying to put forth an amended list of fundamental concerns in regards to artificial intelligence and its development and use within the European Union. And I think even though this takes place in the European Union, this is a very good and interesting idea for some of us as well, right? To think about future-proofing these approaches to the systems and obligations for high-risk systems to facilitate accountability, right? So when AI is directly responsible for harm, what kind of legal recourse do I have, or me as a user? Where can I go to receive some sort of justification or just punishment, or et cetera? And as well as sustainability and environmental protections, right? As we talked about it, and like accessibility, another thing that we spoke about. So there are a few different ways about going for this. I'd be interested to know if anybody else has something they want to add, but if not, I think we had a demo. So I will ask one more time if anybody has any questions, come off mute and ask the question, but if not, I'm going to swing the talking stick over to Anela and we will get into a demo. Is that a new hand?
This is my hand, Mohammed.
Yeah.
I have a problem with the previous weeks about mapping. I don't know how to work on the tool. I finished all my assignments and only the ones away from the mapping. So is there any help with that? Any websites or something that I can work on to finish the mapping on the website?
I will. There's definitely ways to do that. I think you might get some answers from the demo on web apps and dashboards, although I'm not entirely sure if those are connected or not. But Anela is the resident expert on that, so I'm gonna bring that over to her.
Hi, yeah. So just to finish up the conversation on AI before we get into GIS stuff. I just really appreciated, Tim, how in your presentation you talk about the legal issues and people in the field that are taking action towards that. I think everyone in the chat is bringing up really good points and really real effects of AI on everyday life. I think Bernice or Anvi said something about there were 10 cases recently in school of people who have cheated with AI for their assignments, and that's it's hard when, as someone mentioned, that their school's policies just can't keep up with things like that. And I think, as Senna mentioned about the fear of making false things real, I think not only are the people that you mentioned working on making sure that AI is used ethically, but I think some of that is trickling a little bit into the media. So I don't know if anyone is watching the new season of Black Mirror, but the first episode sort of has a take on that. And there's also a show on Netflix that's sort of a reality TV show about couples who are shown videos of their partners and they don't know if it's produced using AI or if it's real, and they have to decide. And I think things like that in the media are going to be really impactful for making sure that people are critically thinking about how they ingest AI and generative content. So for mapping itself, I think there should be some resources on the Google Classroom, some links that we've shared. But if you go, I can share my screen really quickly. Thank you, Tim. Just really quickly, like I can even see that space. If you go to the SDGs Today website and you go into education, there are links on the bottom that should be helpful for any of the mapping needs that you have. So the first resource has a lot of tutorials. It's a gallery of tutorials. And if you filter it by the product, so under all products, you just filter it by ArcGis, ArcGis Online. And maybe all levels, you can change the level to beginner. I think this might be really helpful for any beginning stages that you need help with in your mapping. But I just wanted to briefly mention our Factivism campaign before we get started with that. This is something that we did with Factivism, and I just wanted to show it has different data sets that we feature in SDGs Today and different ways that you can sort of analyze the data and make really interesting points and interesting visualizations on that. So I think there are 10 different ways that they have used the data sets and different facts and how you can learn more and take action. So we'll talk about the rubric for these story maps later on today, but this might be a really good resource for sort of how you can analyze a data set, and then you can connect that to how you can take action for the things that you find out through your analysis. But really quickly, I think for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to do a demo on web apps. So as a brief starter, a refresher, the first session I taught you how to go into the map viewer and create a map from here. So when you save a map in map viewer, you can't just share it out. You can add it to a story map and that's fine, but if you want it to be a standalone map, you have to create a web mapping application out of it. So if you have a map that's open, let me go to this map as an example. This is our My School Today data set that estimates travel time from schools and school-age populations. So I have this map open and you want to create a web mapping application and share it out. You can expand this column here and go to this button that says Create App. From here, there are a few different things you can choose from. You can create a story map right from your map, but I assume that everyone started with their story map first. Or you can choose an app with a focused experience, or you can make a dashboard. So if you're trying to make a standalone map, I would suggest an instant app or a dashboard, and I'll show you examples of both. So if you choose an instant app, what's really nice about this interface is that it asks you what your goals are for the app. So for example, if you want your viewers to be able to interact with your data, I would say this. And then it asks you, what do you want your viewers to do with your data? We really like the features of comparing maps and data. So let's go to that. And then what do you want to compare, maps, features, or layers? Here, I'm going to choose layers just as an example. And then you can sort of choose between the two different apps that they have picked that are suitable for what you want. I think, let me back up a little bit. The most simple one is the basic map. So if you just want to turn this map into something that you can share a URL, you can just do the basic map. But if there are different things that you want, you can go through this process. So let's go through this again. I'm going to choose a media map. This is one that we use a lot. And this is an example of what it would look like. So I showed you a swipe tool map in the ChatGPT story map. And this is really useful for comparing two different maps or two different layers. So this is tropics imagery between May, which is this side of the map, the left side, and then June, which is this side. So if you have two different layers that you want to compare in your story map, I think this would be a really interesting way to be able to do that in an interactive way. That's loading. So I also wanted to show a dashboard. So if you go into our story map for my school today, you can see that we have embedded our dashboard directly into it. And this is something that you can make from your map as well. So you can see there's a statistic here. It says 66% of the student population throughout Africa walk or live over 60 minutes from their closest recorded school. So that's a pretty big stat and something that's really important. So we wanted to highlight it on a big indicator box here. But then there are also these graphs that you can add and other things. What's also really nice about dashboards is that you can select different parts of the map and have that sort of interactivity. So in this top right corner, you can select a country, and then it'll zoom into that country. And these should be changing. Maybe that's not. Yeah, so you can connect all of these tools to the data in the map, and you can see that this the statistic changed and the graph changed. I think it just depends on where you have data and where you don't have data. I think also sometimes it just takes a while to load. So to create a dashboard, I'll go through it really quickly so we have time to talk about our rubric. So we're back into the map viewer with our map. If you go to create app and then choose a dashboard, it walks you through the different things that you can do. So this will load a little bit. I should have preloaded it, sorry. And this is the editing tool. So it loads your map. And then here you can add different elements. If you click on that, you can sort of just like click on these plus signs where you want to add things. So for example, here, one thing that I like putting in applications like this is the legend itself, because I think sometimes people don't know to click on the little legend icon. So I'm just gonna say that I want the legend here. I'm going to click on that, and then I can click on map legend. And then from here, you can sort of just like adjust how big you want things and things like that. You can add other elements. So if I want to add something under the legend, I can sort of click here and then add things like an indicator box. So it'll ask you like which layer you want from the map. And then it'll go through all of these data options and settings. So for example, if I want the statistic to be the count of, or let's see, the sum of female students that live within 30 minutes in this map, I can do that. And then in the indicator settings, you can say sum of female population within 30 minutes of a school. And then you can sort of play around with all of these different things. And then I'll add done, and it adds it there. So these can be very powerful. I can go back to the dashboard that we made for this. Yeah, there are a lot of different things that you can do with this. In the tutorial link that I sent you, there should be some tutorials on all of the other web mapping applications that you can make. And we'll send out some more resources as well. So that was sort of just a brief intro to web mapping applications. And then I think maybe what I'll do is I'll show you how to actually add it in a story map. So here I'm just opening up a blank story. I'm sure you've been adding some different things. So here I would click this button and then go to embed. So you can connect the map from your map viewer using the map, adding the map. But if you want to embed a web mapping application like the swipe tool or a dashboard, you would have to click embed. And then paste the link to that here. I don't think they have it up, but that would be how you would do it. And that's it. We have a few minutes for questions, if anyone has any quick questions, but then I'll hand it over to Tim to talk about the rubric. I think there's some things in the chat. Let me look. Okay, thanks. Lara, go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a question about copyright because like in my case I want to use like scientific diagrams, but I don't know if I can like take them, like use them like that, or do I have to like use my own images and my own videos, or what about like copyright?
Yeah, I think it depends on the image or the graph. You can sort of look in the organization's what's called the terms of use. So if it says that it's open, you can just add that to your story map, and then you would just have to add a credit for where you got it from. Let me look for an example really quick, but there should be a button when you add an image to a story map. There should be something, it'll ask you like what is the credit, and then you can say you got your image or whatever from that source. And then I think that should be fine. That's a great question though, thank you. Are there any other questions?
All right, if we can't get any other questions, we'll go in for the rubric. If yeah, if there are questions, throw them in the chat and feel free to unmute and interrupt us. But would you mind if I ask you, Skylar, to go over?
Yeah.
So I'll share my screen.
Perfect. So as we've been talking about, and as you all have been working on, the final project for this program is the story map that you make based on an SDG. And we will be choosing the top 5 or 10 story maps, both from the individual projects and the team projects, to share at COP28, which is coming up this fall in Dubai, and also at the other international climate conferences this fall. And we've designed this rubric to help you understand what we're looking for in story maps and also help guide the creation and adding the final touches on your own story map. And so you can see we've kind of, it's very standard, I'm sure, to other rubrics you've seen in school, very similar. So we have a couple different criteria that we're looking for. The first being linking to the themes from My Age of Sustainable Development and the book Age of Sustainable Development, which is the book by Jeffrey Sachs that we've been theming this year's summer program around. You can find summaries of those videos and chapters of the book on Google Classroom. And so we're really looking for you to synthesize the relationship between the Sustainable Development Goals, local action, and global impact, which is a very big task. These issues are very complicated. And so we're looking to really see your take on SDGs and climate action. And then we're also asking in your story map to present a clear solution for the sustainable development issue that you've chosen. And we're really hoping that these solutions can be implementable and feasible for the issue that you're tackling. And then we also ask that your story map is engaging, no worries, with local issues. And what would make these very special is if, in addition to focusing on the local issues and how the SDGs are present in your communities, if you can also relate that back to the global goals and the global impact of local action. And then as we've gone through this summer learning about GIS, ArcGis, and data storytelling and data visualization, we're hoping to see that in your story maps as well through GIS skills, creation of your own maps, and use of data in clear and engaging ways. And then we also ask that you have a use case or a call to action, which we can expand upon a little more. Hopefully Anella can share some examples of how this is used often with GIS and with mapping. And then we also have some additional aspects that we've seen in student story maps of the past that have made them really special and really impactful. One of those is the aesthetic that students choose and how they use the visual aspects of the story map platform to aid in their storytelling. And then another is that your story map really inspires the viewers and the readers of it to ask themselves how they can take action for your SDG and the issue that you've raised, and that the story map itself is very thought-provoking. And then other story maps that have been really special are those that directly engage with the communities that they are discussing, whether through community involvement or personal action. There's one really amazing story map from last year that we can share in which a student built her own rain collection system while discussing water usage both in her community and globally. And then also the accessibility of information that you share, how readable it is, how comprehensible it is to the general audience.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Skylar. With the little bit of time that we have left, this rubric is also available on Google Classroom, so feel free to open it on your Google Classroom and follow along with us. But If there is any criteria or any category or anything that you have any particular questions about or concerns about, maybe if you feel comfortable putting them in the chat or opening up your mic now, you can do so, but you can also send us an email or send us a message in Google Classroom, and we will take a look at it and discuss it with you accordingly. Yeah, if there are any questions regarding the rubric or, yeah, there you go, Laura.
Hi, yeah. So again, it's related to the question that I had before, but in the case of links to the call for action, do we have to like ask permission of the organizations to put the links in there, or can we just like add them?
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I think that you can just add them. I think again, as long as you credit where you're getting your sources from, and there's clear connection to what you are linking and what you are proposing as a call to action, then I think that's fine. And I think also maybe one thing that might be interesting is if you do have a call to action that is, you know, sort of volunteer with this organization or got involved with that or something like that. After your story map is published, you can even send it to that organization and say, hey, I included you in this story map that I made. Just wanted to let you know, and maybe they'll be interested in promoting it even further within their organization.
Senna raised her hand.
I had a question about the call to action, that like, should it be directed towards like the readers of your story map, or could it also be like government recommendations?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think either or, if you can find a way to include sort of both, I think that would be great. Yeah.
And Andy also had a question in the chat. Should we add our resources at the bottom of our story map? And I'm assuming by resources, you mean like our works cited or places that you had looked for information, right? So, credits, yeah. Should those be at the bottom of the story map, or should they be present somewhere? I would always say you should credit your resources. As to where that goes in the story map, I'm not entirely sure. I think that's up to you. That's more of an aesthetic choice, maybe. But just keeping in line with what Anela said about Lara's question, as long as you credit your information, as long as you tell people that you're not just coming up with things in your own head when you learned it from something else, you know, as long as you're clear on the fact that you're utilizing information from other resources, then I think you're pretty much in the clear, especially when it comes to internet content and information sharing. But definitely add your resources somewhere on your story map. It doesn't have to be at the bottom, it could be at the top, could be on the side, could be in a hidden link, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's nice for the viewer to see the source as they're reading, especially with data sets. So if you're using a data set to make a map, you know, writing that either on the map or in the description of the map. You can do footnotes, you can do in-text citations. There's a lot of different options. I would say try to be consistent throughout the story map with whatever, you know, method of citing sources that you use, but
yeah, I would highly recommend remaining consistent. That's the number one thing that people always tell me, is that it doesn't really matter how you cite your sources, just as long as it's the same way throughout the entire project and presentation. Another option is, as you may see on some other websites, people will do, as Anela showed, the embed link. So if you have links to things and that you reference them in your story map, you can create a small embed link tied to a word, and then it'll underline it and highlight it. And then when somebody is scrolling through your story map and they see the word, they'll think, oh, that's interesting. I wonder where this link leads. They can click the link and then see how you found your information. So many different options, many different ways to present your information, for sure. Any other questions? These are good questions, guys. And as you get closer to submitting these projects, I think these questions may become more and more useful to each other. But we only have 2 minutes left, so if there aren't any pressing questions, and oh, is there a chat? What's the chat? when is the official due date? So our final meeting is August 24th, the 24th of this month. So your story map should be in by then.
And just another reminder, to get the certification for completion of the summer program, you do have to submit a story map.
If no one else has any other questions, I'm just going to say thank you for showing up and thank you for listening. And we'll close out by saying that I'm excited for next week, but if no one has any other questions or any other pieces of information, then we'll sign off for this week and say thank you to everyone and hope the rest of your week and day is good. All right. Thank you guys. Have a good
Bye.
rest of it.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.